Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting. Basic housekeeping to start with, if that's okay. Fire evacuation procedures. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. So if it sounds, it's real, please evacuate the building immediately. We go out the door to the side of the room and we exit through reception, please. When you go through reception, please meet in the War Memorial Plaque. Please don't wander off. We want to be able to count everybody out who has been in the building, so please don't go anywhere other than there to start with. The meeting is being webcast. It's being webcast live, and it will also be available on YouTube later for viewing. In terms of the microphones, can I remind members and officers to use them as close to mouth as possible so we can hear you and record you properly. Don't move them because they're set up appropriately. And also, please, with your mobile phones, would you switch them to silent or off, please? Colleagues, I've got two absences this evening. Apologies from Councillor Cubitt and Councillor Tomlin. Do I have any declarations of interest from any of us on the agenda items? There's shaking heads, that's a no. There are no urgent matters this evening, so moving on to item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of February. Do I have your permission to sign the minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting? Agreed. Thank you for that. I will do so. Moving the agenda around a little bit, we have one public speaker this evening, so I'm going to take item 6, which is the local government reorganisation paper first. So Kate, if you want to come up to the microphone, I'll just introduce the paper with Gavin and then we'll get you to do your 4 minutes. So the paper before us this evening is this authority's proposal and relating to local government reorganisation. Just before Christmas, we had the devolution white paper published by government on their intentions towards devolution. At the same time, they announced their intentions towards local government reorganisation. Those two things are not the same, but they are being run in tandem. So the devolution white paper relates to the setting up and delivery of a new elected mayor for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and that is subject to conversations and ongoing work amongst all 15 authorities across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight and government. Separate to that, there was a process that the government have set in train related to local government reorganisation and their expectations that across the 21 county council areas of the country, the councils will be reorganised into new unitary authorities. And unitary authorities means bringing together the different services, the different councils, both upper and district authorities, into new single councils that would be responsible for all services. The paper that we have before us this evening has 2 recommendations that relate to the discussions and work that have been going on amongst all 15 authorities across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and also clearly sets out this council's proposed position through Cabinet to Council later this week on where we believe the position should go to, where we should be arguing and advocating for in terms of the position for Basingstoke and Deane in that reorganisation. So if we look at page 8, there are 2 recommendations that relate to the report. The first recommendation is to approve the joint interim plan at Appendix 2 for the submission to government by the 21st of March 2025. So the government set the deadline of the 21st of March, that was from Christmas, by which time it expected to receive in principle proposals from authorities in those 21 county areas. That document reflects the discussions and work thus far of those 15 authorities all working together, and it's a set of principles and guidelines that we've been able to agree. The second bullet point, to advocate and make the case for 4 new unitary councils for mainland Hampshire, including a North Hampshire unitary council encompassing the existing boroughs and districts of Basingstoke and Deane, Hart and Rushmore, is the preferred position promoted in order that we do what is right for our residents in the interests of their needs, their services and the aspirations we have for the future of our area in what would be a North Hampshire unitary council covering those 3 districts, and that is what we seek to advocate for as a part of this process. The report's pretty comprehensive. It sets it out in principle and it covers an awful lot of areas. As you can imagine, the amount and scope of this is significant. It is a point in principle. There is a huge amount of work to be done from here on in So this is a point along a very long journey to go down later this year to September, when a full business case will need to be produced to go back to government for the future arrangements of local government across the whole of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. But that sets it out clearly for you, the letters, the proposals, the details, the guidelines and the principles. So with that introduction in mind, Gavin, would you like to... Do you want to let Kate go first? Yeah, happy to do that. Kate, you can go first. Go on. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm here this evening as the champion for our rivers and natural environment, and recognising that we are discussing local government reorganisation, which will determine the future of North Hampshire. We have declared ecological and climate emergencies, not just in Basingstoke and Deane, but across the region. Being proactive and wanting to seize the agenda that would protect our rivers and their surrounding environs, I'm asking for Cabinet support to undertake consultation with resident and community groups around a motion I wish to put to full council in May. I'd like the motion to lead to actions this council and its successor council can take, such as a charter and declaration of the rights of rivers and memorandum of understanding with partners responsible for protecting and improving the standards and water quality of our rivers. I recognise that there will be a lot of work streams that come from local government reorganisation. We are already in the middle of a local plan, and so this motion and the actions would be incredibly timely. I'm really pleased to say that the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust have committed to helping us achieve this, recognising the importance of our North Hampshire chalk streams. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Would anybody like to respond? Gavin?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank the officers and the staff at this council for the enormous amount of additional work that goes into the normal day-to-day business of running this council as well as we can, and delivering on our priorities and to benefit the residents of this borough. And on top of that, we have the additional work of trying to plan for a future, which is somewhat uncertain given the local government reorganisation. So the existing stream of work of delivering what we need to deliver on a day-to-day basis for our residents, with the addition of planning for the future and also planning for an alternative future as set out by government and this paper. So a huge thank you to the commitment of our officers that continue to deliver to an excellent standard on a day-to-day basis, as well as providing us with all the information we need to make sure we can deliver local government reorganisation to the benefit of our residents. And also thank you to Kate for the enormous amount of work she does, particularly around the River Loddon, protecting the River Loddon, throwing her life into making sure that river is still a healthy river for generations to come. And that shows the importance of local government, because I've sat in county council for the last 8 years and no one's ever mentioned the River Loddon, because it's a very small part of this county's river network. There's slightly bigger bodies of water that do get talked about a lot, and so it shows the importance of local government, and very much one of the reasons why we're looking at the model we're looking at is to make sure we can make sure local priorities like that are not lost in the wider atmosphere, and that we can still deliver for local people on their priorities.
Thanks, Gavin. Andy?
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you to Kate for that comment earlier. As the Cabinet member responsible for the local plan, I look forward to working with you to make sure that the River Loddon, in fact all of our streams and waterways and rivers, are protected as best they can be within the planning regulations. Going back to the proposal around the local government reform, I just think it's worth us being absolutely clear about the question that we're being asked to consider this evening. We're not being asked for our views on the pros and cons of local government reform. This government is going to press ahead with a process of reorganising local councils, regardless of what we might think or we might want. So any debate on that topic will be largely academic. Instead, we're being asked for our views on what local government reform should look like in Basingstoke and Deane, and the paper before us this evening begins to answer that important question. The paper takes the first step in looking at the big picture and suggesting that we should introduce 4 unitary authorities in Hampshire, with Basingstoke and Deane forming a new Northern Hampshire Council alongside Hart and Rushmore. Given the realistic options that we've got available, this configuration, I believe, is the one that will best serve Basingstoke residents. The other possibilities will involve us being subsumed into a much larger authority where it will be really difficult for residents to have their voices heard, and that's not something that I could support. I'm sure that my Cabinet colleagues share this view, and I hope that full Council also ratifies this approach when we meet on Thursday to discuss this. So I'd argue we've got a good starting point, and I'd like to thank officers and Cabinet members who have been responsible for taking us this far. But it is just that. It's a useful foundation. It's not yet a complete solution. In my view, the success of local government reform in our area is going to depend crucially on the financial strength of the new authority, so on the funding that we're able to secure. We've got a proud tradition of investing in our public and community services here in Basingstoke and Deane. That tradition has been many decades in the making and is the envy of all of our neighbouring authorities. They can't compete with us when it comes to community and public services. That commitment has survived numerous economic downturns, many changes in political control, and even a pandemic. We can't allow it to come to an end or get watered down because of local government reform. That's something that I feel very strongly about. We must ensure that our area has the resources it needs to continue to thrive. I know that's an objective this administration will prioritise as the process of reform moves forward and we begin the next phase of discussions with central government, as Paul's already outlined. This administration is less than 2 years old, but we've made some momentous decisions in that short space of time. On our local plan, which is going to set the rules for house building in our area for the next 15 years. On many down to unlock the delivery of much needed affordable homes after years of delay. And on the rejuvenation of our leisure park, which has the potential to become a major regional draw once again. We now have to make an even bigger decision, one that's going to affect all of our residents and for decades to come. I believe that the proposals contained in this paper represent the best way ahead, and I look forward to working with my Cabinet colleagues, our wonderful officer team and the government over the coming months as we set out the details of how this new council will work and aim to get the best possible deal for the people that it will serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I'm conscious that we have a debate at full council on Thursday. If we approve this paper this evening, council's the next stage of the debate. It goes there. That will give all 54 councillors the opportunity to have a debate on this. I think it's really, really important that all councillors have an opportunity to make their contribution to this debate, which they will be able to do on that. I think specifically, Kate, in relation to what you've raised this evening, I think that's straightforward. Very happy to support in that, I think, and look forward to working with you on that and bringing that motion come forward and see that motion come forward. So I think we should definitely take that offline, work with you on that and seek to build as much support as we can around where you want to go on that. So thank you for that. Laura, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well, thank you for giving us notice, Kate, in relation to what you're bringing forward. And I think that's really, it's always really helpful if members do that, because I think it gives us an opportunity to work on the shape of that. But I think it is an opportunity, and I think I would support a memorandum, and I think that is a good way forward. I think it's great that you've got support to do this work, as you said, and I'm confident that you will deliver something really that is really fit for purpose and that, you know, is going to do what you want to do. And I think it, as Gavin had said, I think this is an opportunity in relation to our aspirations as to what we want to achieve for a new unitary that we're going to be part of. And I think that this is an exciting time, and I think we can deliver, you know, something quite special. So I look forward to working with you, and I'm excited about what you're going to bring forward. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. There are so many work streams that fall out of this, and there's so much to be debated and discussed over the future period, over the next few months. So this is just the beginning of this whole process, as we know. Anybody else, or are we okay? Okay, we've got the recommendations before us on page 8 of our agenda this evening. Are we happy to recommend and happy to approve? We agree. Thank you very much, everybody. If I go back to the agenda, on item 5, we've got the motion referred from council regarding support for Basingstoke Town Football Club. There's 4 bullet points that relate to the motion that we have in front of us. I'm going to go through them just one by one and just be clear on the actions and where we go from here. The first bullet point is to ensure that any Section 106 or SIL contributions from the current and future development linked to the Camrose site are used for the purposes of football. That's very clearly set out in the processes around the use of the monies from that site, from both elements of the site as well, which is important. And so that bullet point will be fulfilled as part of the process through Section 106 and SIL, and the way the funds will be allocated and therein spent. Item 2, to engage with BTCFC and the Hampshire FA and Sport England and other stakeholders to develop a viable plan for securing a permanent high-quality football facility. We are engaged with Hampshire FA, we are engaged with BTCFC. Those are really positive conversations going on at the moment for the future of football in Basingstoke and Dean, across our borough, and specifically in relation to BTCFC's future. We do share their ambitions and aspirations. So in terms of bringing forward proposals, that is a part of our ambition and aspiration, but they're going to do a lot of heavy lifting to be done by a lot of partners around that. In terms of 3, commitment to transparency and community engagement, yes, that's quite clear, and we hope that it will be sooner than 6 months that we may have something to bring forward, but we will maintain our standards, as we always do, of transparency and engagement with the community, partners, stakeholders, and also fellow councillors as we go through the process of working with BTCFC and Hampshire FA and other members of the football family in Basingstoke and Dean. In terms of item 4, it has here to explore additional funding options, including potential grant applications, partnerships and public-private funding models to supplement the funds secured through this motion. That, of course, will be a critical part of going forward in any way with football across Basingstoke and Dean, that we leverage as much money from external partners, external sources of funding, and that we work with those partners to enable and help them to leverage funding that will support them going forward. So I think each of those 4 bullet points from the motion are really positive. They do reflect the work that officers have been diligently undertaking in support of BTCFC, working with Hampshire FA, and also working with the broader football family. The motion was very well meant, and where it came from was very positive. We're positive too. The question is now continuing that work and getting results at the end of it. So hopefully, members, if that's okay, I think I've covered the main points there of the football motion and would give us an indication of how we intend to go forward on it. Anybody get into the comments they'd like to share? John, please.
Just one comment. I think it should state in the agenda and the minutes that it's Basingstoke Town Community Football Club, not Basingstoke Town Football Club, which is, I believe, a different entity from the past.
Indeed, I'm looking down at the semantics. It's important we get it right. Basingstoke Town Community Football Club, BTCFC. And we'll amend the record accordingly to make sure that's reflected. Anybody else? Are we okay? Okay, everybody. Moving on to item 7, we have the redevelopment of Southam Library, West Ham Community Centre as a part of the wider regeneration of Buckskin and Southam. And I have Gavin.
Yes, thank you, Paul. A West Side Story. Unfortunately, property wouldn't do it through the medium of musical. They've done their normal report, which is very good. For the benefit of several viewers online, the story behind this is Southam is part of a regeneration project already, and had been at the time, has been for some time, and regeneration is moving ahead. And the plan was always, as part of that regeneration, that at some point the community centre, like all the housing or much of the housing, would be upgraded and replaced by something better. Unfortunately, in September 23, RAC was discovered on the site, and that meant that the community centre had to cease trading and be closed for the public. And also the attached library had similar issues, having been a building of the same age and attached to it. So both have been closed. An incredible amount of work has gone on by our property team to try and understand the best option for the building into the future. We've looked at the potential to repair it. That would be very expensive, and obviously because it was due to be replaced at some point would obviously not be the best use of public funds. Additionally, we could look at just demolishing it and rebuilding it on the same site. Again, a lot of money being spent. Bear in mind, we're doing regeneration. It was likely to be built somewhere else anyway. Wouldn't be the best use of public funds. And so we've also been working with Hampshire County Council. In the meantime, I think it's important to stress, and again, thank the hard work and commitment of the West Side Community Association. It's very difficult being a community association without a community centre, but they've continued to thrive and do what they can. They've had support from our officers and financial support from the council to keep them going during what's been a very tough time for them. The pavilion has been put into use to support them. They've got a community cafe now in one of the vacant shopping units, and obviously in the previous decision we made, the Beacon pub has been purchased as part of the wider Southam regeneration, but can be put use to the community benefit in the interim period. So the decision here is following negotiations with Hampshire County Council about what they want to do with their bit, and effectively they wanted us to take it and pay for the demolition. What we're going to do with our bit, and clearly having you look at all the options, demolition is the only way forward, the most sensible way forward. This paper effectively approves that decision and gives delegated power to Director of Regeneration to carry on with the work. So the plan is we're acquiring the Hampshire element, the South Ham Library, and also our own community centre, bundling them together and handing them over to the Sovereign Network Group. It's for less than best consideration on the basis that the disposal will support the wider regeneration. Obviously, what we'll then hope is that Sovereign Network Group will then replace the community centre with a new modern facility in consultation with ward members and the community association. So we've got a fit for the future premises in as soon as possible. It's unfortunate there's been that gap in provision of a permanent community centre. It's been frustrating. And obviously, I know that she's not here tonight, but our Cabinet member, Onley, will put on her pestering skills to make sure that Sovereign Network Group keep pushing the permanent replacement of the community centre up their list of priorities to the very top. And if anyone's been pestered by Onley Cubic before, they know that's a significant pestering power. And so that we'll make sure that we do get the long-term solution in place. But today's decision is just about leaving our Director of Regeneration to finalise the terms of the acquisition of the Hampshire element of the site and passing it over to the Sovereign Network Group so they can add it to the jigsaw puzzle they're assembling to do complete regeneration.
Thanks, Gavin. Colleagues, anybody else?
And I'd just like to say that, in relation to and I know that councillors did ask the question at full council of South Ham, and the desire to have a community centre as soon as possible. And I think that we as a Cabinet need to sort of give them that confidence that that is our priority to them. We need to stress to SNG that they come forward as soon as possible with a new community centre. I know that's different to what this paper is about tonight, but we need to give them the commitment that we want to see a community centre delivered in South Ham and Buckskin as soon as possible as part of the wider regeneration. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. John?
I just add my voice in support to the point that Councillor James just made. The Community Association have dealt with a very difficult time in an extremely positive way. And I think we should thank the community team at the council here as well for the support that they've provided to make it happen. But also to SNG, who provided the King's Cafe building. And I'm happy to go on record, and have been several times, that I will press Sovereign at every opportunity to have the new community centre as early in the redevelopment programme as possible, but respecting the fact that a certain amount of master planning has to take place to make sure we build it in the right place. Thank you.
I mean, what replaces the west side's got to be fit for purpose. It's got to meet the needs of the community. It needs to be designed well. There's a whole process to go through to meet what's required. I'm also conscious that I think Councillor Watts wanted to be here this evening and wasn't able to be so. So if Gary would like to share his question with Cameron, and I'm sure we'd be very happy to answer the question that he would intend to have put this evening if he was with us. So we'll make sure he gets any answers to any questions he may wish to put. But the point being, we hear the voices of those councillors in that community that need their community centre. We're doing everything we can to support them in the meanwhile, and we will continue to do so. I think in the short while, we understand that. In the longer term, medium term, particularly working with SNG, our commitment is pretty clear, and it will continue to be so. John?
I just make the point that I've instigated a series of meetings with the ward councillors, together with officers and representatives of SNG, for exactly the sort of reasons you've just said, and my commitment is to keep that communication process going for absolutely as long as necessary. Thank you.
Just another reflection of how we want to do our business and work with members and work with colleagues in their wards on these issues. So, colleagues, we've got the recommendations as Gavin has rightly set out for us on page 62 and 63. Are we happy with the proposal as set out, and do we agree? Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to item 8 on page 75 of our papers this evening. It's the Preferred Registered Provider Partnership Arrangements, and it's Councillor Laura James.
Thank you, Leader. The report seeks Cabinet's approval to adopt a preferred partnership scheme. In order to improve relationships with registered providers, drive up social housing standards within the borough, and provide clarity for housing developers as to which registered providers the council prefers to deliver new on-site affordable housing. Sign up will be voluntary through an assessment process that we are in the process of drawing up. The preferred partnership scheme will be enforced through 106 agreements for all new planning approved housing developments. Thank you.
No one for contributions. We okay? Cool. Conscious in terms of the paper, we've said socially rented housing is an absolute critical priority of this authority and our administration. We're very conscious that housing standards and estate management and the way our RSLs and RPs work with us is really important. This paper gives us a whole toolbox to work with them as preferred partners to achieve those ends. So colleagues, on page 75 of the report, we've got the recommendation before us. It's those 4 bullet points: to approve the preferred partnership scheme within the framework as set out, to delegate the authority to finalise the detail and all the memorandum of understanding under the scheme to the Director of Residence Services in consultation with the portfolio holder, to delegate authority under the memorandum to the Director of Residence Services to agree, and then to delegate authority to take decisions under the adopted preferred partner scheme to the Director of Residence Services. Are we happy to make those 4 recommendations as written on the paper? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. Item 9 is the Q3 Capital Monitoring Report. Page 85. It's back to Councillor Gavin James.
Yes, I'll be very brief for a simple reason. It's a strange time of year because we've just approved the budget for next year a month ago, and this sort of is looking back beyond that. So obviously, as we go through the year, we track our capital projects and adjust where they might end up landing based on when we can get suppliers, parts and whatever else. And so actually everything you see in this report, you may feel like you've seen it before because it was reflected in the budget, which moved stuff into future years' budgets where there's been delays and things forward where there hasn't been. So we've seen it all before, so I'll leave it there. It's clearly just for noting.
Okay, colleagues, any points on the paper? Laura?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just in relation to, where are we? 4.8, Northern Community Project, and I know that we see this within the paper quite a lot, but I just want to say really positively that lots of work is going on at the moment in relation to this, and with the trustees of Oakridge West Community Centre and the refurbishment plans to take forward. And so at the moment we're looking at all of the development plans with them in some detail, and thank the office for what they're doing, and it's going to be an exciting time and we're going to have something that's really fit for purpose going forward. So just a quick update on that Northern Community Project.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, colleagues, the recommendation is set out on page 86. It's for Cabinet to note the 5 bullet points associated with the paper, the forecast capital expenditure, the outturn variations listed in section 4 and the explanations that go with them, the Q3 forecasts, the latest forecast for capital receipts and grant and contributions, and the risk associated with the capital forecast as detailed in section 8. Are we happy to note them and they're in the paper? Agreed? Thank you, colleagues. The next paper is the Q3 Revenue Monitoring paper on page 101 of our papers. Gavin, you again.
Yes, a very same situation with the capital programme. Obviously, we monitor our spending throughout the year. And so when you see some variances in this report, they've already been reflected and built into the budget that we've already put forward and been approved by full council at our last meeting in February. So this is, again, historic news, and most of this stuff you'd have read before because it was mentioned in those reports. What it does show is at the moment we are in a favourable position. Obviously, it's not worth getting excited yet because we'll wait to the year end. Inevitably, there's a lot of fluctuation around interest rates, etc. at the moment, and property income, which has been stronger for us. And there are more costs arriving, but we'll know better when we get the outturn report in July.
Another strong outturn and another good story. Thank you very much, Gavin. For any colleagues, any other contributions? No? Okay, colleagues, on page 101, we have the recommendations before us. They're set out in those bullet points. There are, just checking, yes, 4 of them. So we note the financial position of the third quarter and the outturn forecast, The violence on item 2 set out in section 4, summarised in section 4, to note the savings and investments in the services position detailed in section 6, and to note the risks associated in section 9. Again, it's for Cabinet to note and to recommendation to us. Do we agree the recommendation? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to item 11 is the policy for letting council investment properties to voluntary and community organisations, page 117 of our papers. Gavin.
Yes, for benefit of our viewer, obviously the council owns a number of properties. Some are operational properties, some are community centres, and we hold a range of investment properties as well. From time to time, those investment properties become quite difficult to let for whatever reason, where we look at disposals, and that may not be viable or possible at the time. And in the past, sometimes we've allowed worthy voluntary organisations to rent on a short-term and low-cost basis those properties. But it's been a very scattergun approach with no way of controlling how those buildings are used beyond the initial intentions of the organisation that takes over those buildings. So this policy is about putting that into some sort of order and some sort of control, so that anyone who does rent properties from us at a potential discounted rent is fully aware of their obligations and what they need to do in order to maintain that discounted rent. Is that we have to do in terms of delivering best value, that we can look at slightly lower levels of rent where it's appropriate, and there's going to be a community benefit of an organisation delivering priorities of this council. So this is the policy that's being constructed by the officer team to make sure that we are in a better place, and also those organisations are in a stronger place in terms of fully understanding their obligations as well as their rights in terms of how we'd work out the tenancy arrangements with them. So that's the policy. A lot of work has gone in from the officers. Say it's not about community centres, it's not about investment properties, and also to make it clear that the assets we hold for investment purposes are there for investment purposes to deliver a return to support council services through the rent we receive. This is an exception to that, where there are occasions where we might consider an alternative, but it's certainly not normal business, because we do have to recognise the importance of the property, the money we generate from property in delivering those services. But at least we now have a policy in place, subject to your approval, that will mean that we're in a stronger position to make sure we're getting best value when it's not cash value, it's social value, that we can maintain that, keep that, and make sure we are getting best use of the council's assets, which of course are the residents' assets.
Thanks, Gavin, absolutely. The recommendation is set out on page 118, colleagues. Would anybody else like to make a contribution, or are we... John, please.
Just a quick comment really there. I totally agree with what Gavin says about bringing order and control, but I think it's also worth highlighting that it brings transparency to the process. And I think for a community organisation who is leasing one of these buildings or is considering getting into an engagement, this gives an opportunity for transparency for all involved, and that's to be welcomed. Thank you.
That's a really important point, and it's something that's part of making this decision. In doing so, colleagues, then, we have the agenda item, set out on page 118, the recommendations to Cabinet. There are 3 bullet points there. To approve and adopt the policy for letting of council investment properties to voluntary and community organisations, to grant delegated authority to the Director of Regeneration, to agree the detailed terms relating to the implementation of policy, and to note the implementation timetable for the policy. Are we happy to take those recommendations? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. So on to item 12, which is the purchase and improvement of May Place House. Councillor Laura James.
It's the James night tonight, isn't it? May Place House is currently owned by London Quadrant Housing Association and was converted into a hostel accommodation in 1995. The direct purchase of the freeholder May Place House is an exciting opportunity and demonstrates our ambition and strategic leadership in delivering the objectives of the Housing and Homeless Strategy 2023-27. It builds on the borough's unique social inclusion partnership, and that has undertaken trailblazing work on preventing homelessness. May Place House is the borough's emergency access homeless hostel for single people and a gateway for some of the most vulnerable members of our community into supported housing to avoid homelessness. This gateway plays a vital role in minimising levels of rough sleeping, offering 24/7 specialist housing support services. In building The building is in much need of improvement, with residents currently sharing bathrooms. There is one industrial-sized kitchen. The layout makes it challenging to deliver a homeless hostel given the complex needs of the single homeless cohort it now serves. There is a lack of secure accommodation and separate provision for male and female residents. Also, a lack of suitable communal space, which is much needed. In spite of the poor quality accommodation, the delivery of the site's 24/7 support has been exceptional, delivering some great outcomes. But we want better. We propose refurbishment to deliver 18 bedrooms, each with ensuite and access to one of the 4 new kitchenette areas and improved facilities. Hampshire County Council has announced that the funding for May Place House service will end and will not be renewed after March 2026. Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council has looked at how we can maintain the vital service, and through remodelling the service and building, we can demonstrate the critical work that supports homeless people in our borough. These changes will mean that we will offer a much needed and better service. Faced by the cuts from county, we will make the service sustainable and one that is fit for the future for today. And going back to the earlier paper, the first paper we had on reorganisation, it just shows what we can do, as what we're doing at the moment as a borough and what we will be able to do in the future. We're ambitious and we are going to do things differently. And I think this is a really exciting opportunity, and it's part of a broader regeneration of the top of town, but it's also that is our commitment to delivering exceptional homeless services. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Colleagues. Gavin, please.
I think this is absolutely fantastic news. Being homeless, I've not experienced it. There can't be much worse than being homeless. And it's never just, I don't have a home. It's always other issues that sit alongside that in relation to trauma and mental health and substance misuse, etc. So you need an environment where you can rebuild a life and help people get back on track and get the life they want and then move on successfully. It's amazing that May Place, given its current condition, has been able to achieve that with so many people. But to actually have a nice environment where there are kitchens, I suppose one big kitchen, which means most people have to go and use McDonald's, which is not easy on benefits, but now they have kitchens where there's just a small number of people using the same kitchen. It's going to be a life changer. It means they're going to learn new life skills, have the opportunity to learn and develop their skills so they can live independently and successfully, because anyone who's homeless lost a home at some point to become homeless, and actually rebuilding that whole life rather than just finding a new place is a really critical part of tackling homelessness in the long term and helping people get back on track and stay on track. And this facility will be able to do that. So I think it's one of the best papers we've bought, and one of the best decisions we'll make is get May Place to be a place of recovery and rebuilding lives, as opposed to a warehouse for storing homeless people.
Well said, Guy. Anybody else, colleagues? No? Just a couple of points. I'm just conscious that this is a choice. This is the choice we're making as an authority, as an administration, to do this, because it's the right thing to do. I think it's really important to put that on record, because the county council's made a choice. Their choice has been to withdraw their funding, and that has presented a situation to us that we've stepped in the way we have done to remodel the service, rework the service, and work with the housing association, or that we take over the property and we regenerate the property. And in regenerating the property, as Gavin rightly says, as Laura rightly says, it presents us an opportunity to offer a service in a remodelled way that will make a huge difference to people's lives, and that's really important. You know, we're making a choice to do this because it's the right thing to do, and it's a clear commitment of this council to delivering on our homelessness agenda. Laura, you wanted to come back in, please.
Just to say, obviously, we will be closing May Place while we do the work, and that's going to be a challenge in itself. But I think we also need to recognise that the Social Inclusion Partnership will step up and work with us, and how lucky we are to have such a partnership. And, you know, they're going to support us in how we accommodate those people over that period of time, or whoever that might be over that period of time, to fill that gap. And I just think that we need to recognise, and I talked about, them being trailblazing as as a group of, well, it's a significant number of organisations that have come together. And also just to say that this year, it's the 10th anniversary of that social inclusion partnership. And I think that we, as a cabinet and as an administration, should do something to celebrate that, because I think it's something to celebrate and we should be really proud of that partnership that we have. Thank you.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. We should work towards celebrating what has been a hugely successful partnership. And all of the people, I'm just thinking, in 10 years, think about all those people who have been helped and supported over those 10 years by the work that those partners have done, working with us as an authority, and everybody's contribution to that is huge. And if there is ever a sign of what local government can do, what a council can do, this is it. I mean, this is the reason for being. So in making this decision, looking at page 140, colleagues, we've got the recommendation to us. It's a 3-point recommendation. The first bullet point is to approve in principle the freehold purchase and the refurbishment by the council of May Place House. The second is to delegate authority to finalise those terms and conditions to the Director of Regen. And thirdly, to delegate authority to finalise the terms and conditions of the contract for providing the housing management and the support services to the Director of Residence Services. 2 really critical arms to make this thing work. Are we approved of that recommendation? Yeah, hugely positively. Thank you very much, colleagues. There are no other agenda items this evening, and there's nothing confidential for us to consider. Thank you very much for being here. I close the meeting.